If you're an HR professional who works hard to fill roles within your company, keep employees engaged, and build company culture, welcome to America Back to Work, where dreams only work if we do. We'll share wide-ranging issues surrounding pre-employment background screening, HR topics such as recruiting, hiring, labor trends, and company culture, as well as broader HR-influenced business topics such as customer experience, service level excellence, and protecting what matters through best practices in prevention, protection, and corporate security. America Back to Work is brought to you by S2 Verify. Here's your host, Arnette Heintze.
Welcome to America Back to Work, brought to you by S2 Verify, where our purpose is to help you hire with confidence and manage insider risk. I'm your host, Arnette Heintze. Thank you for joining. Today, our guest is Brent Tilson. Brent is the founder and CEO of TilsonHR, a PEO company and HR consultancy. Brent, thank you so much for joining me today. Would you mind sharing a little bit about your journey and how you came to establishing TilsonHR, as well as a little bit of background in your career before that?
Well, Arnette, it's a pleasure to join you today and talk about all things PEO. That is my life, is all things PEO anymore. So thrilled to be on the show today. Thank you for the question about, my background. So in the company, so I started off my career as a CPA. So my early years started off at a company known as KPMG. Used to be Big 8, now Big 4 accounting firms. 4 of them have disappeared and there's 4 remaining. And I started off in audit and tax, and then started my own CPA firm in the early 90s. And I was working with a lot of small businesses, as you would expect, as as a small CPA firm. And what I found with these small businesses were really good at their products and services. And they'd always ask me for advice on all kinds of things, and not always accounting and not always tax. So typically it had a lot to do with just running their businesses. And I did a lot of business consulting early on. And what I found is they were good at what they did, but they weren't good at all the stuff related to employees. And oftentimes they would get things wrong. They would screw up their taxes. They would screw up withholdings. They wouldn't know how to put together benefit plans and do it pre-tax. And all this, what I think, stuff you have to do as an employer. And so in 1995, a little over 28 years ago, I came up with this idea of what if I was the employer and I could handle all the employee details, and that the companies got the use of the employees. Didn't really know the PEO industry even existed. It was just an idea. Like, how could I manage this for them? And that's when TilsonHR was born. So started the company in 1995. It was literally trailblazing. Nobody believed what we did was legal. You're really going to employ my employees, and I'm going to lease them from you, is what they used to say. Used to call it back in the day. It's like, yes, that's what we're going to do. They're like, is that legal? Like, yes, it is. And now fast forward to today, the industry's come a long way. But that was our early, humble beginnings. Me as a CPA trying to find a way to help small businesses be better at what they do by taking the burden of HR and employer responsibilities off their back.
So PEO stands for Personal Employer Organizations.
Professional.
Professional. Okay.
Yes, professional employer organization.
And that, since you started your organization, it's taken quite a foot. You were really one of the early trendsetters in this space then, because I know over the last 20 years, it's starting to gain a little traction.
You're absolutely right. In the early days, when I was going and trying to sell these services, it really was a major lift. It took a lot of actually personal relationships to develop the trust for a company to say, okay, yes, I'm going to let you, move into this new relationship. So many of our original clients were very entrepreneurial themselves, even think about, using these types of services. The funny thing is, fast forward to the day, I was at a NBA game last night. I'm in Indiana, so I was at the Pacers game. And I was talking to this young lady next to me who was talking about this exciting company she's working for. She's here in Indiana, but company's based out of Tampa. They have 75 people. Well, I couldn't help myself, but okay, I got to go in sales mode. And I asked her, so how do you manage your HR? She said, oh, and she mentioned one of my competitors in the PEO space. I just had to laugh. It's like, that's awesome. The fact that here you are and your company's this fast growing, successful business, and you're using a PEO. It's like, I mean, it just was like, wow, where have the last 30 years gone? Because 30 years ago, that would never have happened. People would have said, you do what?
Exactly. So tell us how a PEO organization actually works within HR management function and the collaboration that takes place, or in fact, that there's not management really in the firm itself. How does that play out?
So I'd like to help people think about HR by thinking of HR as a triangle. And that triangle is broken into 3 sections. And the bottom third of the triangle, which is the largest in width, is the HR transactional activities. It's the stuff you have to do because you're an employer. It's processing payroll, managing benefits enrollments, and answering questions and compliance, and just all the stuff that the treadmill is another term. It's the treadmill of HR. It has to get done every day and done really well. It doesn't necessarily, that part of HR doesn't make a company better. It doesn't do anything. You just have to do it really well. The middle of the triangle are the HR functions are actually where managers and employees are working together. So you have real HR functionality that drives a company. And the top part of the triangle is the strategic HR. Well, PEOs do a really good job at the bottom part of the triangle, the transaction stuff. So we allow companies of all sizes, for us, smallest would be about 2 employees, largest has about 750 employees. And we just help them really do all those little details that have to get done every day. And then if a company's large enough that they have their own internal HR, we are a complement to them, because instead of them getting caught up doing the stuff that has to get done, which is stuff we do, they can focus on, driving recruiting initiatives. They can work on culture and developing, the goals and missions of the organization, how those are aligned with how they use their, personnel, their HR, the real human capital to drive that initiative forward, and not get caught up in the really busy stuff that the PEO does. And then for those companies that don't have an HR person, which we have both, the PEO, then we have HR professionals on staff that are able to take the calls from the clients and the managers and owners and, people who are the operational people. So we're there to help them through compliance issues, employee relations issues. If there's, going to be some sort of personal improvement plan that has to be put in place, and we can help a business think about what they need to do with a certain individual, or if there's going to be a termination. So the PEO really is there as a resource to help them run the day in, day out things better, and to provide a resource for both HR professionals and or the leaders of an organization.
Yeah. So help our audience understand a little bit of some terminology here. Employer of record, as well as co-employment, and how PEOs come in place here. How does that lay out?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question, because, and one of the most common questions we get is, okay, how does a PEO work? And what I explain is it's in the legal structure of co-employment. And so Tilson, in my case, my company's name, Tilson HR, becomes the employer of record for all of the employees at a company, and not just part of the workforce, all of them, owners, everybody. And they become employees of Tilson, but at the same time, they're also employees of their own company. Mm-hmm. So there's still that employment relationship. But then we have, through a service agreement, to a contract, we delineate responsibilities as co-employers. And the best way to think about it is the PEO is the fiduciary employers, another way to think about it. So we process the payroll, pay the taxes, manage all those details, provide all the employee benefits, sponsor the benefits, not just provide them, sponsor them as the employer, and do all those things related to, I guess, the business of being an employer. Now, the company is the employer for purposes of direction and control. So they're telling the employees, obviously, here's your job, here's what you do, here's the times you work, set the rate of pay, literally run the business. So the advantage of the co-employment is that under the federal and state laws, mostly federal laws, if we have the ability to sponsor employee benefit plans. And we also have not only the ability to do that, we have rights and responsibilities as employers. So we take on certain risks for my company. So we do, kind of put our self on the line when it comes to issues and making sure things are done compliantly, and we're taking those responsibilities. So the employer of record is for purposes of be able to do the payroll, do the benefits, and really manage employment.
Well, there's got to be huge advantages for organizations when it comes to the benefit issues, because typically a PEO is going to get much more favorable pricing than the size of the company that they're in discussions with, right?
Correct. So PEOs are able to use their size and number, all the employees under what we say under management, and pull them together in negotiating for, group health, dental, vision, supplemental, all the benefits. And in fact, we're able to not only provide and offer and provide, very financially competitive solutions, we also manage all of it. So it's one thing not just to have access to it in today's world, from online open enrollment to, just all the things that employees enjoy from not only the provision of benefits, but the technology behind it that we're able to bring as well, just to make it very easy for a small business to literally, fight way above their weight, so to speak. So we're able to compete with the Fortune 500 companies for employees because the PEO is bringing so many resources to bear on behalf of that small business.
So when it comes to, there's a traditional approach to hiring HR consultants and buying HR tech tools. What's the difference with PEOs here?
When I think about HR consultants, the first thing I think about is a white pad of paper that's blank.
Mm-hmm.
And you come in and it's like, okay, tell me where it hurts. Let's talk about culture. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about that. Or maybe it's a compensation study. Typically, HR consultants are used for projects. And we want to update our handbook. And we don't want to go to the attorney. We want somebody to come in and sit down and craft it with us. We want to look at our culture. We're going to do, Myers-Briggs test, whatever it might be, right? There's going to be an HR consultant tends to be very project oriented. And where it's different with a PEO is a solution driven offering. So in other words, we don't just go get plugged into a company and then fix something and leave. When we are working with a business, it becomes a systemic part of how they run their organization, and to the point where they can go focus on just growing their business and scaling their business and not worrying about, I just hired an employee in Arizona and then I hired someone else in Michigan, and someone moved from Michigan to Florida. Well, in our situation, we operate in all 48, states here in the mainland, as we call it. And so when a client hires people, it doesn't matter where they are. We can handle that. We're set up. We're able to do every state that, that they may move into, and we have partners for Hawaii. But we think about a PEO, it's not just a project, it's a solution.
Yeah. So I have to believe that there's going to be some competitive advantages to engaging a PEO, especially when it comes to recruiting and talent retention. Can you talk about a little bit of that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And, Lindsay, I'll follow on from the prior question and tie these two together. So your other question also asked about technology. Well, one of the nice things about PEOs is we can assemble a stack of technology. We have a primary HRIS system that processes all the payroll and does all the benefits. But then there's a lot of solutions that we're able to work with and add, whether it be, a time and attendance system on the front end, possibly working with performance and assessment tools, working with, as I mentioned earlier, onboarding to make it very easy for employees, no matter where they are, to be onboarded. And so the PEO's technology is something that a small business typically can't put together on their own. They're just like, they can go out and find a few resources, but at the end of the day, they have to manage it themselves. And one of the advantages for the PEO is the PEO manages it. And it makes it a lot easier for businesses because they're getting all the technology and the HR and the PEO is providing it. So then when it comes to recruiting and trying to, to grow their own business, because the PEO's offering this suite of benefits that they probably can't have access to, or to be really challenging to put together. The technology in today's world Employees are looking for businesses that are more savvy. And if, an employee walks into a small business and they're handed a new hire kit, it's all paper and there's 122 pages of benefit information, and, take it home and complete it and come back. And, just in today's world, being, more technologically advanced, as well as having the suite of employee benefits, not to mention the other thing that our clients will tell us is that when they're recruiting and they tell the employees that they use a professional firm like us to manage their HR, they said it makes them feel better about what they do because they're investing in their people, and their employees know, hey, this company is serious about doing this stuff right. And so a PEO is going to help us get there. And so we have employees that'll leave one company, go to another one, and call us and say, hey, can you come in? Because this company really needs you guys.
Great. So if you were to describe an ideal business or client for you to work with, and who gets the most benefit out of choosing a PEO, can you categorize that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to categorize. What's really interesting is I like to frame it that there's not really like this. You could say there's a sweet spot, but the reality is different companies are different positions in their growth curve, so to speak. So if you have a company that's a startup and say 5 to 20 employees, they don't have any infrastructure. They are just trying to get sales in the door, trying to grow and survive. And a PEO brings them a lot of stability. Then you go from 20 to 50. Now all of a sudden you've got multiple layers of management. They need more sophistication. There's more employee relations issues. Possibly now they're moving into multiple states. Mm-hmm. And then the PEO is able to bring them a lot of value that is even more than what the startup experienced. Then once you go from say 50 to 150, now you got a lot more sophistication, depending on the industry, of course. But then you have more sophistication, more complexity, and the PEO is able to provide resources. For one, turnover increases. Typically, when you get into those levels, you have a lot more departments and different needs. And so the PEO, just once again, each area has a uniquely different value proposition for the company. Because once you're going 50 to 150, you probably have an internal HR person. And then they're making the decision. Do we bring all of it in-house, or do we continue using the PEO? And I was at a company last week. They have about 100 employees. When they started with us, they had been around 50. They are in the professional services world. So think of CPAs. They have 4 offices now across the country, one in Indy, one in Michigan, one in Dallas, and another one in South Carolina, I think is where it is. And the owner was telling me, he's like, Brent, we couldn't be here today without what you do for us. Mm-hmm. And we're able to go grow and scale, hire great people. And there's always employee relations issues, and you guys are there for us. And it really was rewarding to hear him talk about, he doesn't have an interest in bringing it in. If anything, his comment was, why doesn't every company use a PEO? It makes no sense to me, is what he said. I don't understand why they wouldn't. So that's when I say, when is that perfect one? It really depends on meeting them where they are in their growth and their life cycle, and how a PEO can solve their issues they need at those points.
Yeah. Are there any signs from a company that maybe a PEO is not a good option? Have you ever come across that?
Yeah. We call that field underwriting. And in field underwriting, if a company is not interested in being in compliance with federal and state regulations, mm-hmm. then a PEO is not a good option.
Yeah.
And we've had companies where maybe it's their workforce that they're hiring that are undocumented workers, and they find out that, oh no, we're doing every I-9 for every employee. We're going to do it within the 3 days. We have all just as simple as that. And then they're like, I think the meeting's over. It's like, okay, you find out pretty quick. There are some companies that just doesn't fit. I'd say that's the number one. The other is a company that really is struggling on a cash flow basis. And the reason being is the velocity of money with a PEO. We're processing payroll every pay cycle. Mm-hmm. And the way we get paid is we collect the money from the client each pay cycle, a couple of days before payroll hits the employee's accounts. And we're collecting, not only all the wages, but all the taxes, all the any insurance contributions that the company's making, typically worker comp premiums at the same time, because most PEOs provide for workers' comp. And all of that's happening on one invoice. And it's not like a small company who's kind of borrowing from the future. PEO is not going to, sadly, if you're really going to make ends meet, a PEO, maybe what you may need, that may not be the right time for a company.
Yeah, I hear that loud and clear. Well, Brent, thank you so much for the insights around PEO. I think it's been really helpful for our audience. But I have one last question I'd like to ask you before we sign off. And that is, if S2 Verify were to conduct a background investigation on you, would there be any surprises?
Let me think. If I had a background check on me, I think that the funny thing that people would find out is in high school, I played the lead in Bye Bye Birdie. And so, fortunately, very fortunately, cell phones didn't exist back then. So there are not any pictures floating around the internet of Brent wearing a gold sequined outfit, staying on stage to.
Oh, that's a good thing for everyone our age, is that we don't have those videos that everybody today is getting. So that's a fabulous observation. Well, Brent, thank you so much for joining me today and helping us understand PEOs. How can our audience keep up with you and figure out, maybe reach out and talk to you about that?
Thank you for asking, Arnette. The easiest way to get a hold of us is go to our website, which is at TilsonHR.com. And they can certainly see all the information about the company, what we do, and there's a contact us form there, or they can reach out to me by just dropping me an email at btilson@tilsonhr.com. So BTILSON @tilsonhr.com. So either way, and love to just chat with anybody about our services or answer questions.
Well, that's fabulous. Thank you so much. And before we sign off, I'd like to have a minute with Bill and Jim, my partners at S2 Verify. If we set aside the federal oversight, compliance, regulatory issues for background screening, we also have almost every state has various requirements and compliance issues themselves, some more than others. And I know we touched on a couple of them: California, Illinois. Any particular compliance issues from states that you see arising a lot for clients to better understand?
Basically, California continues to, enact laws that are basically challenging the employers to have a safe hiring environment, but also follow the law, of California. There's just a lot of variation in what you can and can't do in California. And that's just one of many states. A lot of the states follow the FCRA. And so if you look at their language in their state laws, it's very similar to what is in the FCRA. Some states will go a little further, but I think, states like California, Oregon, Washington, some of the states on the East Coast, Massachusetts, there's just a lot of things you have to be careful of.
Yep. Jim, I know that many states have regulations governing the use of credit history in hiring decisions. Can you share with us states that do and don't? And is that anything that clients are asking for today?
That's another very good question. S2 Verify offers what's referred to in the industry as an employment credit report. Big picture definition of that is you're not garnering a credit score. Okay. The score has become, as you know, the way that any financial retailer or grantor of a credit benefit really looks for. They really don't even look at a credit report. They want a score and then they move on. In the world of employment, states like California is probably the leader on this topic. is pushing hard on not to do away with the credit report, but to have a specific reason for ordering a credit report, meaning the candidate has to be in a position where they have access or insight to what I would deem to be sensitive financial information. Number one. Number two, they've got to have access to what would be consumer data, credit card information, Social Security information that deals with credit. And kind of last but not least, they have access to cash or to assets that the firm would deem at risk if someone that had a poor credit standing or was in financial need had access to. There's only a handful of states nowadays that apply those rules. Most of our clients have no issue with it. They understand it. They're usually ordering a credit report when they've got someone in that category to begin with, and really not a challenge and not an issue. More focused though on the individual's ability and, for lack of a better term, whether there's anything in that credit report that would indicate a challenge or an issue for the job they're applying.
For our audience, please tune in next week when we continue our exploration of topics critical to success in HR. We'll see you then. And it goes without saying, let's get America back to work, because dreams only work if we do. Brent, thank you so much for joining. Pleasure having you on today.
Thank you. It's my pleasure as well.
If you want to stay abreast of HR, recruiting, and hiring trends, tips, and tools, make sure you subscribe to America Back to Work. If you enjoyed this episode, leave us a rating and a review.